So, for the most part, when I was planning out how I'm going to do this particular episode, I had a very different idea in mind. I was looking for something related to something completely different. But when you see a title that just starts with "What is wrong with guys?" for some of y'all, if not even most of y'all, you'll think, it's just some person complaining about dudes. But for me, when I see a title like that, I automatically have my interest piqued. Because as the guy that talks about relationship shit from a guy's perspective, the moment you see what is wrong with guys, you either know that it's something that babes can't explain with a guy that you can, or it's an interesting situation which you as a guy have to decipher from a guy's perspective so that, you can kind of come to some sort of a conclusion. Although then again, that's mostly just me and how I usually think about it. But anyways, I'm going to get into all of that plus my breakdown on the entire thing. But before I can do any of that, I need to seem like I have some manners and start with a nice intro. So welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is Sir Denver B. This is a shortened version of the usual episodes that I do. And yes, I will be continuing with these episodes for a little bit of a while as I prepare to give you guys something pretty interesting on episode 450. So in the meantime, what you guys are getting is a shorter version of the podcast with less instrumentals, minimal editing, and it's just me voicing out stuff that is mostly coming to mind that, I would have probably done on the main episode, but, at the same time, it's not as processed as the main episode and has a lot less fluff. But anyways, where was I? Now, while I was on Reddit over this past week, I stumbled onto a very, very interesting post which had the title, and I kid you not, this is the title, "What is wrong with guys?" Now, instead of talking about it, let me just read for you. So it says, and I quote, "I started seeing this guy from Tinder about 2 months ago. He's only in town for a few months before he moves back to his hometown, so we said we were just gonna hang out casually. The second time we hung out, he stayed with me the entire weekend. After that, we hung out every weekend, and lately he spent the night during weekdays as well on his initiative. When we hang out, we always hook up. But not only that, we make dinner together, watch movies, we've been out for dinner as well. He gives me massages, strokes my hair, kisses my forehead, and for me, those things feel a little more than just casual. One weekend when we were hanging out, I told him that I liked him. He didn't say anything back then. He texts me daily and checks in, wondering how I'm doing and what I'm doing. He says things like, "I miss you, can't wait to see you again, I just want to sleep next to you, and I don't care if it's late when I get to your place, I just want to sleep next to you." We were talking about my dog and I said that I love my dog very much, to which he responded that he's not a dog person but he loves my dog too. And for me, that's not something you say if you don't like me. But I guess it could mean something different for him. Then like a week ago, we had a talk where he said that he's so excited to move back home but that it's also gonna suck because he won't be able to see me. So I asked what his intentions were about us after he moved back, and he said he just assumed that we wouldn't see each other anymore after that. That he hadn't really wanted to think about what happens after he moves. To which I responded that I would think it sucked if I never got to see him again after he moved. And that's when he said that he would like to keep seeing me even after he moved, but that he didn't want to string me along if I wanted something more serious because he wasn't there right now. And I said that was fine. But it confuses me to why he would act like he actually likes me and might want something more and then just say he doesn't want anything serious. The other day when we were texting, he said that he feels very safe with me, like he can be himself to 100%, and that he wasn't saying that he was in love with me, but he likes me very much and wanted me to know that, and that he had thought about it a lot during the day and really wanted me to know. Later he said, "Move with me. We can buy a house together. We could have separate bedrooms, but I would probably sleep in your bed with you every night. We could get a tub and I could cook you pasta." It had kind of a joking undertone, but it still confuses me as to why he would say these things if he doesn't want anything serious. So my question is, why do guys so often act like they like you and want you to be their girlfriend and then say they're not ready for a relationship? End quote. Okay. Now, having seen this entire post and some of the responses, I really don't even know how to respond to a good chunk of it, but I can see that there's quite a lot of indecisiveness in what this guy was saying. Just coming from a guy's perspective, I can see the indecisiveness. And I don't know if I'd call it a red flag or a green flag, but it could be both. A red flag in that this guy could just be saying a bunch of this shit to keep you interested in him, even though he's probably interested in other people or other women, and he's trying to keep his options open, which I honestly think is highly unlikely. But now I feel like it's more of a green flag because for the most part, this guy is spilling his feelings and, he's trying to show affection for this babe, even though he feels like he doesn't have time. Because this feels like it's a time-bound situationship that he didn't expect to get too engrossed into. But anyways, with that said, like whenever a woman tells me something like this, or at least gives me such a story and then asks what's wrong with guys, I usually kind of smile for a bit because I don't think they actually realize that women do the same exact thing. Like, this is an issue, this is a scenario that affects both genders, and contrary to what some people might believe, guys go through this problem as well, where they feel like they're having something really, really good with a babe, and then all of a sudden at some point, the babe pulls the rug from under them and is suddenly like, oh no, but this wasn't anything serious. I thought this was supposed to be casual. I didn't see why we were supposed to move to this point. Of which most times whenever I sort of hear or see such a thing happen, that's usually an indication that either the babe has found someone else that they'd prefer to be with, or they just didn't want anything serious and you kind of fell for it because the babe ticked a lot of boxes that gave you the feels. Like, it does happen to guys as well. But with that said, even though I do like to point out the fact that it does happen to guys as well, the reality of it is the most affected people in this are usually the women. And it's unfortunate that for the most part, even after now, you'll find that a lot of the recipients of the pain, or, the people that always end up on the short end of the stick, are usually the women. And, there's reasons for that, and I will kind of get to those in a little bit. But when I was kind of looking at the comments of this entire post, there was one thing that someone said, which kind of did sound like something that your older sibling or like an older person or like a parent would probably say, which was, and I quote, "Why get into a relationship when he gets to do all of this stuff without a title?" End quote. And the moment I kind of saw this, it was one of those situations where I was like, even though I'd like to be like, oh, well, you don't entirely understand the whole situation, blah, blah, labels, blah, blah. Like, they kind of have a point though. Like, for a dude, if you can give him everything that he'd want from a relationship without, the boundaries of a relationship, then he'd take it. It's kind of like giving a babe all the benefits of a relationship, which is, a great friend, someone that can be a provider and protector and blah, blah. Without the boundaries of a relationship, she'll take it. Like, at the end of the day, if you can give the benefits without the investment, then best believe people are going to go for the benefits and not make the investment later on. It's almost like a free trial, but it's one of those ones that a bunch of us don't really know we're taking a part in, and we just end up falling for the other person. And it mostly comes as a result of people setting some sort of boundary that, is like, oh, it's just a casual thing, or, we're just banging, or it's just a situationship, or it's just a friends with benefits. And you don't want to look at the reality of it and update the boundary, because if you decide to actually pay attention to it, then you suddenly start to realize that it's not what you sought out. Because one of the things that a lot of people who usually end up in such situations or situationships usually forget to acknowledge, and I guess too many people even who aren't in them usually forget to acknowledge, is that considering that most of them usually start as a result of just casually hooking up, it's never usually just sex. Like, for the most part, it'll rarely ever be a just sex situation. Most times it'll start as, oh well, it was just a shagging. Then the shagging will be accompanied by cuddling and chilling together. Then some cooking will be thrown in either before or after, or even both. Then they'll be chilling and watching movies. Then it'll be going for certain events together. Then it'll be sharing, certain deep, dark stories about each other. Like, eventually those feelings just start to get created over time. And the biggest culprits of developing feelings, within a friends with benefits type situation is usually the women. But it doesn't mean that the men don't get it. It's just it mostly affects the women. And a lot of times when the person who's caught feelings realizes they've caught feelings or has a feeling that they've caught feelings, they usually never like to address it up until, stuff is a little too far gone, and suddenly it's like this other person might be pulling back, and then now it actually starts to hurt. Then you start finding people addressing their feelings and shit, which is usually a pretty tough place to be. And that's kind of the I don't want to say nastier, but sadder side of situationships, because a lot of times people get into situationships because they expect it to be casual, they don't expect anything too serious, because they quote unquote don't believe in labels, and over time it just becomes this thing that just grows and grows and grows, not unless if you're having multiple partners or some shit, but it grows and grows, and it gets to a point where it's sort of uncontrollable from a feelings perspective. And then suddenly that's where the pains begin. Because, for example, in this particular case, if the feelings were addressed a hell of a lot earlier on, then maybe they'd have tried to work things out. Or if things wouldn't have worked out, they'd have known that it's something time-bound, and they probably wouldn't have kept the feelings high. Like, it's one of those things where if you know that it's not going to last, then you're comfortable with the ending, or you don't get on board with the entire thing because you want something that actually lasts, which is normally where the unfortunate ending of situationships usually comes up. Because when you kind of think about the situationship in and of itself, depending on whatever situationship you're in, you find that there's a lot of gray-lined boundaries, a lot of dotted lines, and a lot of fences that are very, very low set. So it's like you cross the line all too many times, and you go further and further in up until you get to this point of no return, where now you want to turn back, but there's already emotional investment from the other side or from you, and now you wish that things could go to the next stage, but the other person probably still isn't down for it, and then suddenly it starts to sour things for the both of you. Or it puts you in this very resentful state of confusion, which isn't good for either one of you. So you probably at that point would have been better off knowing that, if you were going to take that step that could take you to that point, you should have probably been comfortable with the negative outcomes of either things continue as they were or they just stop altogether. Because you being in the sex only zone and you're having sex with the other person might seem okay at first, but over time it can grow resentful, and trust me, when it gets to the point where it's resentful, it's not even worth the sex. Then at that point you'll wish that you addressed the issue earlier so that you'd have sorted things out and you wouldn't have wasted either your time, their time, or both of your times. So to kind of conclude all of this, I'll be very honest and say that I can't really give one general one-size-fits-all conclusion for it. Just mostly because situationships are very ambiguous, they're very context-related, and I can't give a one-size-fits-all piece of advice for all of them. But what I can say is, if you are in a situationship with someone, or if you got into some sort of situationship, whether it's just a casual hookup or friends with benefits or something of the sort, and you do develop feelings for the person, it's good to address it a little bit earlier. If you are in a position where you feel like it's like you guys are, going towards a relationship, then it's good to address that shit earlier. Because it's not good when you feel like you've given a premium service out for free. Plus, it's not a good feeling knowing that you've wasted a bunch of time on something that you felt should have been more, but never really lived up to it. But even then, when you choose to address the entire issue, always remember and be comfortable with the 3 possible outcomes of that conversation. Either 1, the person might actually choose to get into a relationship with you, and that's great. 2, that they are not willing to get into the relationship with you, but are willing to continue keeping things as they are. Or they are not willing to continue the relationship, and because there's feelings involved, probably you might not be okay with it as well, so you guys will have to end the entire thing. Although, then again, who am I to guarantee shit? I'm not entirely sure of any of this, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG, on Facebook, it is at Breakdown, on Westside, on Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.